My name is Jocelyn Spence. I am a visiting researcher here at the Mixed Reality Lab in the Computer Science Department, which is kind of interesting. I thought I would use my talk to leverage two things that I have going for me. One of them is that I have been around for a while, and the other one is that I have done so many jobs that have nothing to do with tech at all. As a matter of fact, I have an undergraduate degree in film. I have a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, and technically my PhD is in Theater Studies, even though it was actually an interaction design thesis. So, so what I have to say, my take on women in tech, might be slightly different, so I'm going to give you a little bit of my perspective. First of all, from having been around for a while, this is a still you may or may not recognize from the movie Working Girl, which came out in 1988. I would love to tell you I was a fetus. I was not. This was held up as the model of how women are supposed to get ahead in the world. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, or even if you have in the past, I highly recommend you see it again, because parts of the movie will absolutely make your toes curl. It is so mortifyingly awful, and it makes you sing for joy that we have come so far. And parts of this movie are so mortifyingly common even today. I make you realize how far we have not come and how far there is still to go. Thankfully, the hair is one of the things from the past. So what I want to talk about, being as I come from a non-tech sort of background, is to ask you sort of what counts as tech. Okay, fine, obviously, if you program, you code every minute of every day, then you're in tech. And if you actually build or make the physical things that go with the tech, okay, fine, yeah, you're in tech. But what if you're in business development, and the business you're developing is a tech business, so you need to have a really strong concept of what it is, but you don't actually get your hands dirty with the tech? Is that tech? What if you're an expert in research methods having to do with technology, or user experience research that's absolutely all about interactions with technology, as for example, I myself do. My sort of shtick is performative experience design. So I look at how people perform with technologies and perform in everyday life. I am currently performing with technology as we speak. So to what degree am I in tech? To what degree did it matter that I actually programmed my own thesis? To what degree does it matter that I had a lot of help? What is it that's so special about tech? So I was answering this question by looking at jobs I have had. I have done all of these things, slightly terrifying, and I color-coded it. So the pink ones are the jobs where I looked around and just about everybody I saw was another girl. And the black ones are the ones that were pretty evenly mixed. Miraculously, user experience and information architect, the group I was in was headed up by a woman, and we were more women than men in the group. But of course, the woman reported to a man. So what did they have in common? Well, you see, I had a few writing jobs, and when it was things like marketing, when you could be selling anything, you could be selling tech, or you could be selling a windshield wiper, that was pretty evenly mixed. As soon as you were writing about tech, as soon as you were explaining step 1, turn on, step 2, go to this button, yeah, then I was the only woman. It was quite shocking. And the other thing was film production, okay? So you have women doing, or had at the time, hopefully it's changed since then, you had women doing anything that involved a clipboard, okay? They would do continuity, they would do production, high-up roles, or makeup or costumes, but when it came to actually making the images or the sounds go onto the thing people see, making the thing, crickets chirping, trying to find other women. It was just me. It was really quite ridiculous. And of course, anything in tech, CS research. When I was an e-learning designer, a web designer, it was mostly men. And that is a little bit interesting. But it leads me to the conclusion, maybe it's not so much about tech per se. Maybe tech just compounds the problem of women in power. Now, this is not me calling you stupid. This is Bill Clinton. This is another quote. Tech is where the money is made. Tech is the sexy thing. Tech is where the future is being created, yeah? Everybody holds up Steve Jobs, oh, he's the incredible genius. This is, therefore, where where you want to be. And not only is it a sort of center of power, but it's also a center of power that's based on things that are already really entrenched in what we assume to be male-dominated world views and male-dominated ways of approaching things and things that men are good at, like math and science. Bearing in mind, I'm talking about assumptions and what people perceive and what they assume. So it makes sense that institutionally, you're going to have tech-resisting women. Now, what am I trying to say here? Yes! Yes, so this is the part where you're all shouting, yes, but these are all generalizations. Of course they're all generalizations. There are exceptions to break every rule. Everyone in this room pretty much is an exception that's going to break all these rules. But think about using your imagination. Imagine going to drop off a 3-year-old at nursery, and every single person working in there is a guy. Imagine that. Have you ever seen it? Never. Imagine going into a really high-powered boardroom, and every single person in there is a woman. Have you seen it? Not so very likely. This clip from a couple years ago, the 17 female chief executives in the global 500. This is still what we're used to seeing. So the generalizations can all be broken, and there are always exceptions, and of course this isn't the way that the world has to be, but it's still how we are used to seeing things. And that's what I would really like to challenge. So this is my own personal experience. These are people I have worked for in anything having to do with tech or computer science research. So these are lovely individuals. And these aren't all of them. These are just people I could find easy pictures of online. Lovely, lovely individuals. I personally have never once, ever, been able to point to a situation where I felt discriminated against, looked down on, anything having to do with my gender. Not once. And some people actually go out of their way to make gender-friendly situations. But she's a girl. One. And she's the one who reported to a man. This just is my experience. And it's probably the experience of a lot of other people. And I think it has less to do with tech than the fact that we're talking about power. Now, how do you get around this? I am not for a minute going to tell you how you should get around it. I'm going to tell you how I got around it. So, back in 1989, this was high tech. Be very afraid. What happened was I got hired as a receptionist. And there was this magical thing over in the corner that meant that when you wanted to make a letter, you didn't have to type it first and then correct your mistakes with liquid paper and retype it. You could actually type it into the computer first. And then when you'd made all your mistakes, you could print it out once. It was incredible. People were terrified of it, completely terrified. They couldn't make any sense of how to use it. But it had this little thing on top of the keyboard that if you wanted to make some text bold, you would select it and hit like a little command thing and a B, and it was bold. Or you'd select some text and have a little command thing I, and it was italics. I thought, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. I poked at it, and it worked, and I printed out my letters. They thought I was a genius, and they promoted me after 3 weeks to assistant legal secretary. What I know about law does not even fit in a thimble, but it's because I was curious, and I thought, oh, this isn't so bad. No one called it tech, so it didn't occur to me to be afraid of tech. Okay, fast forward to 2000. I moved back home to San Francisco. I lived very close to Silicon Valley, and this was right before the bubble burst, so they wanted anybody with a heartbeat who could do anything remotely technical. So I clicked the fabulous little thing called View Source. View Source, okay, so here's some stuff that looks like it's saying, I want you to read this as some sort of information to be displayed on a screen, okay, and oh, wait, I recognize those are the words on the screen. Oh, hey, the ones that are bold have a little B in front of them, a little B at the end, just like on that old typewriter-y thing. I could do this. And so, yeah, horrifyingly, I got paid to do stuff like this. This was my own site. I won't show you any of the ones I got paid for. This was state-of-the-art, I'm frightened to say, but I got paid for it because I thought, View Source, that looks interesting. One thing led to another, and the next thing you know, I have a PhD and I'm working in a computer science department. That's the part where you should be very afraid. Now, I'm certainly not advocating that people sneak in sideways or sort of Don't take things head on. If you want to do tech, absolutely do tech. But it is possible to do tech and be a woman in tech without sort of the full frontal assault, just because it looked kind of cool and people thought, oh, hey, she can do it. So my 2 rules are, things are squishy. Things change, expectations change. It used to be that Detroit was the center of the universe. It used to be that clerical work was men's work. Women weren't allowed to do it. And now, you get stuck in it. God help you. It used to be that geeks were actually geeks. Like, you did not want to be called a geek. It was a horrible, horrible thing. Now it's got this sort of sexy cachet, which is still quite shocking to me. But these things are not squishy, okay? People, individuals, be kind to them. They probably are consciously working to the very best of their ability to be fair and kind and wonderful. You'll know a lot of the previous speakers were talking about our unconscious attitudes and subconscious biases. That's been my experience. But be absolutely ruthless to the institutions you deal with, because all of the assumptions and the biases that are built in that mean we still have, 17 female CEOs in the Fortune Global 500, and you still have 1 person out of 10 leading a tech sort of situation. That is institutional, and that needs to be challenged. Go for what you want, and look out for biases, and don't get horrible, talking situations like I have right now. It must be because I need lunch. So that's me. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so Jocelyn's not the only one who's ready for lunch, I think, in this room. So maybe if we have a quick 5 minutes for questions, and then I'll do a bit of an explanation about how your lunch is served, because we have prepared personal lunches for everybody today. So you don't have to queue in a sort of awkward fashion system. Your name should be on your lunch, but I'll explain in case you didn't provide the details, because it all relied on some technology, and I know that's scary. So, so yeah, does anybody have any questions for Jocelyn? Up here?
So, as an only female in a workshop, I obviously get a lot of teasing. I just wondered how you dealt with it if you were the only person in a tech company.
I never got any overt teasing or anything like that, but I definitely would be very, very aware, not only that I was the only woman, but being sort of left out of jokes, being left out of the vibe, the sort of feel in the room changing when I would walk in the room. I've had that happen quite a bit. I'm not sure how. I've never come out and gotten in people's face and said, oh, you're doing this horrible thing, it needs to stop, because again, it never felt like it was a consciously evil thing directed at me because I was a woman, so I didn't feel like it would be fair to go after them. But I would try to kind of elbow my way in, or if it was starting to feel a bit uncomfortable, I would kind of take up a little bit of space and say, so, how about them bears? Or try and bring something up myself to just assert a little bit, like, I get to be here too, I get to be part of this conversation, and I can steer things a little bit. I'm not sure how successful that was in changing anything, but it made me feel a bit better, if that helps.
Any other questions? I think everybody's reluctant to make everybody wait for lunch, aren't they? This always happens in a lunchtime session. We have lunchtime meetings in our lab, and Jocelyn, that nobody asks questions afterwards because they're all like, lunch.
Thank you for not lynching me.
Yeah, thanks for not heckling through this one. So, just to add on that point, actually, I was in a very male-dominated course throughout my degree. I actually didn't come from computer science. I came from audio and recording technology. I was one of 4 girls on a course of 84. And if you didn't become that kind of dominating character, almost one of the lads, you didn't really get the social kind of inclusion that you might have done. You might have been a bit of a wallflower and disappeared into the background, and you wouldn't have been the leader on projects and stuff. I'm quite a directive person. I don't know if you've seen this, but I take challenges on. I go ahead with things, I run with things, and I roll with things. And that's quite easy to me. It's a little bit natural, but it's really hard for you to almost step away from being feminine almost, and
I've never worried about being feminine.
yeah, but sometimes you feel like you step away from that character, and it's not always in somebody's comfort zone. And yeah, it's just a difficult challenge. But I think that it's just about not really overthinking those things, like you say, just not directly calling somebody out on something if you were maybe a little bit offended by it, but just being as open and connecting with people as much as you can. And if somebody is really overly rude to them, then do. I'd call them out on it. But,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
No,
challenge
if anyone
that.
is actually getting in your face in a way that is incorrect, you absolutely call them out on it yesterday, yes.
Yes.